guys, what's up? Are you wondering how to get your dog to stop barking on walks? Have you felt embarrassed because your dog just won't stop barking at other dogs and people? Maybe they're even growling, jumping, and lunging toward them. Erica Pasha here with the Kind Canine, and today we're going to be talking about reactivity, what motivates it, and what you can do to create an environment for your dog where they feel safe and confident out on walks. Let's get to it. My dog is reactive. If your dog is growling, barking, jumping, or lunging while you're out on walks, and you've done a little bit of reading on those behaviors, you've probably come across the term reactivity. Most often, it plays out this way. A dog will see a trigger, maybe it's another dog, it could be a stranger, maybe even a bike riding by, and all of a sudden, the dog will blow up out of nowhere. In a half a second, they're at the end of the leash, barking, jumping, and lunging to try to get to the trigger. This can happen when the trigger is 50 feet away, or 500 feet away, or even more. Oftentimes, it can seem like your dog is suddenly becoming aggressive, even though you swear your dog would never hurt a fly. If you've ever experienced this with your dog, you may have felt embarrassed, dragging them away from the situation as they're barking and lunging, almost like a little toddler throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. If you're anything like us, before we became dog trainers, we had no idea what reactive behavior was the first time we saw it, and we were even scared that we might have an aggressive dog. So what is reactivity anyway? Dog reactivity is defined by an overreaction to external stimuli. In plain English, that means that dogs can get really amped up when it sees something overly exciting, fearful, or concerning in their general vicinity. It usually goes like this. The dog is out on a walk. The dog sees a trigger. The dog explodes into a barking fit, and the dog is dragged away by the human, apologizing at a distance to the trigger. This explosion of barking and lunging we call going over threshold, like way over threshold, as in the dog is over the threshold that they can tolerate, and so they react. When we train with dogs who are reactive, we always want to keep the dog under their threshold and work to change their association with the trigger from there, as well as teaching and rewarding alternative behaviors to barking and lunging. Be sure to stick around to the end of the video, because we're going to be talking about what motivates these behaviors and how you can get started in creating a safe and comfortable environment for your dog. How can I keep my dog from reacting? Oftentimes with reactive dogs, there are a few telltale signs that our dogs are getting over threshold. When I think about a dog's threshold, it's helpful for me to think about the stress scale that dog trainer Grisha Stewart outlines in her book, Behavior Adjustment Training 2.0, or BAT for short. I want you to imagine that your dog is on a bright sunny beach, but approaching the water. As your dog's stress level rises, it goes deeper and deeper into the water until it is fully submerged in its own stress and unable to cope with those big feelings. It's at this point that our dog is over threshold and resorts to barking, jumping, and lunging to tell you, "Let's get out of here," or "I can't take it anymore." It's our responsibility as our dog's guardians to observe when our dog is showing us signs of stress and to pull them out of the water before they're fully submerged. From low-level stress to high-level stress, stress signals that you may see from your dog can include licking their lips, hard staring at the trigger for more than a couple of seconds, being unable to disengage, or they won't stop staring at the other dog, stiff face and body, tail up and stiff, mouth closed and tight, fur up, barking, growling, and/or lunging. Observe when your dog is displaying any of these behaviors and get out of that situation as gently as possible. Without tugging on the leash, trying coming around to the side of your dog and getting their attention with a kissy noise, offering a treat in front of them to lure them away. Sometimes, when a dog is particularly stressed, yanking or tugging them away from the situation can add more stress and put them over threshold, triggering a reaction. While this is certainly necessary in an emergency situation, if you have a bit more time to get their attention, it can lead to a softer way to get them out of the stress zone. It is important to note that these stress signals can show up quickly and progress even faster with some dogs. Oftentimes, you may feel like your dog goes from 0 to 60 without any warning. This is common, especially in intense cases of reactivity, so it's important to understand why this is happening, so that you may be able to avoid the situation altogether. So why does this happen to your dog in the first place? Let's talk about the motivation behind the barking and how you can help your dog with some of their big feelings. Why is my dog reactive? If your dog is reactive, it's likely motivated by one of two emotions, fear or frustration. It's important for us as dog guardians to realize that our dog isn't reacting because they're stubborn, they're not out to embarrass us, and they're not trying to be dominant over other dogs. They're probably just having a hard time. Big feelings like this can cause our dogs to do some pretty intense things. Here's how I think about it. Whenever our dogs are experiencing high levels of fear or frustration, it becomes more difficult for them to cope with those big emotions. When those emotions get too big, bam, we get an explosion of barking, jumping, lunging, and sometimes snarling or even foaming at the mouth. Yeah, it can get pretty intense. The other thing that we know about what is happening when dogs are over threshold is that no learning can take place. By the time that they're reacting, they've already gone off the deep end, and it's not the time to train. It's time to remove the dog from that situation. We really need to be working on their big emotions before they get too big for the dog to cope with. I like to call this the learning zone, before they're over threshold. As you can see here, the learning happens when our dog isn't experiencing high levels of stress or anxiety and is typically pretty calm. In fact, in my training with reactivity, it typically looks pretty boring. The dog isn't barking, there's no jumping, and we strive to keep the dog under threshold for the whole training session. If this is what your training looks like, that means you're on the right track. Setting up your training sessions so that you stay in the learning zone instead of sending your dog off the deep end is critical to making progress toward how your dog feels about the triggers they encounter. So how can you tell if your dog is fearfully reacting? Dogs that are experiencing fear are either saying, "I want to get away," or "I want you to go away." Some things you might pick up from a fearful dog who's in flight mode would be that they keep a low center of gravity that is away from the trigger, and their rear end might be tucked under with their legs bent. They may also alternate between lunging forward and bouncing away. A fearful dog who's in fight mode might be standing high and stiff on its toes, facing the trigger in an intimidating stance. Okay, so how do you tell if your dog is experiencing frustration? A dog may be frustrated that it can't greet the other dog and may be bouncy, vocal, and if allowed to meet, may greet the other dog pretty enthusiastically, sometimes a bit over the top. Overexcitement still poses a risk to all involved, because a particularly enthusiastic or rude greeting can start a fight if the reactive dog is persistent in its play or greeting and doesn't take cues from another dog who might be trying to say, "Please stop, you're making me uncomfortable." While fear and frustration are two different emotions, they're approached somewhat similarly in training. Over time, the hope is to reassociate a dog's triggers from being overly scary or overly exciting to being a generally positive and calm experience for all involved. This type of work takes time and patience from the dog's guardian. The progress we see in the dogs we work with takes weeks, months, and sometimes even years, and there's no safe and ethical quick fix. In fact, some of the punishment-based methods sometimes prescribed in this space can intensify aggressive behavior and have a negative long-term impact on the dog's welfare at the same time. Instead, it's best to work through a dog's reactivity consistently and compassionately so that both you and your dog build the foundation of a loving and trusting relationship with each other. So how do I fix it? Living with a reactive dog can be a challenging and emotionally draining experience, but with the proper training, the right guidance, and some helpings of kindness and compassion along the way, you can find the right balance to help guide your dog through their big feelings. In fact, I can tell you that working through your dog's reactivity can create a truly special bond with them. And I know that can be the case because of this girl right here. In fact, the biggest reason I became a trainer in the first place is because of the journey I've gone through with Nia. So while it may not be easy, it can be so rewarding to look back on the progress you've made with your dog. Here's a few things to consider to get off on the right foot with your reactive dog. Set yourself up for success. Don't put your dog in an environment where they're likely to react. In my experience, the biggest mistake that people make with reactive dogs is to not give their dog enough distance from their triggers. Most reactive dogs have a personal bubble. If a trigger is in their bubble, they're going to react. While your dog's bubble may only have a 50-foot radius in a given environment, I've worked with dogs whose bubble is a football field long. If your dog is reacting, you need to give them more space. To further set yourself up for success, try limiting the amount of triggers that could come into your dog's bubble. This might mean going for a walk when most people will be inside, or finding a place where no one will be. Both walking on off hours and finding a quiet and remote place can be great adjustments that still allow your pup to get the enrichment and exercise they need from going out on a walk. Understand how to change your dog's association with their triggers. Here are 2 fantastic training methods that have been used extensively to work with reactive dogs. The first is the behavior adjustment training by Grisha Stewart that I mentioned before, or BAT for short. Another is outlined in Control Unleashed by Leslie McDevitt. Both methods have books laying out in plain English how to work through reactivity with your dog to help address fearful, frustrated, and aggressive motivations that your dog may have. Both books are linked in the description below if you'd like to learn more. Work with a force-free trainer. Reactivity can be one of the most challenging issues that we as dog guardians face. Helping your dog change their association towards their triggers is a complex process that takes time, expertise, and dedication. Partnering with a force-free professional can provide the needed support and guidance, and it can make all the difference when you're addressing your dog's reactivity. Many states have force-free chapters that can help you find a trainer that's going to be the right fit for you and your dog. Here in Oregon, we have Force-Free Oregon, just as an example. Remember, you can make progress toward a happier, healthier relationship without risking the relationship that you have with your dog by using punishment-based methods. I hope that you've learned some of the biggest reasons that your dog is barking on walks and how to start making progress on your dog's reactivity. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We're on a mission here with the Kind Canine to strengthen and energize the relationship that you have with your dog so that you can experience the magic that comes from having a truly special bond with your dog. Everything that you're doing to share and like and comment on our videos is helping us to spread that message even farther to more people. So thank you. Stay tuned to our channel for our next videos where we'll be diving into some of the work we do specifically for our reactive dogs to help make their world a little bit less scary. I look forward to seeing you there. Bye for now.